The white palace walls glowed like molten gold under the final bleeding light of the sunset. Bilqis stood on the highest balcony, her fingers pressing hard into the cold, rough stone of the railing. Below, the desert stretched into an infinite, shifting sea of dunes, hiding everything that truly mattered to her. She watched the horizon, eyes scanning the dark patches where the sand met the sky, searching for a single rhythmic flicker of light. Behind her, the heavy doors of the royal court creaked open. She did not turn. She heard the soft, deliberate scrape of leather on tile as the ministers gathered. Their voices were low, a constant, dry murmur that drifted upward like smoke. She felt their gaze on her back, sharp and calculating, measuring the distance between her current position and the throne. She was the center of their world, yet she was entirely alone. The silence of the desert was a lie. The palace was a trap of whispers and watchful eyes. She pulled her hand back, turned, and looked down. The servants' passage was narrow, smelling of damp earth and stale oil. Bilqis moved through the shadows, her breath shallow, counting the steps until the stone walls gave way to the open night. She emerged into the dunes, the palace now a distant, jagged silhouette against the stars. The sand shifted under her weight, cool and fine, sliding into her boots with every stride. She walked until the horizon swallowed the palace entirely. At the edge of a hidden oasis, the silence deepened, broken only by the rustle of palm fronds. The Stargazer stood by a small, flickering lantern, his hands moving over a map of constellations. As she stepped into the circle of light, he looked up. He pointed toward a cluster of stars, his finger tracing a path in the air. He whispered, "Even the stars know your heart is greater than your throne." Bilqis stepped closer, the lantern light catching the worry in her eyes. She asked, "But what if this love turns the kingdom against me?" He did not answer with words. Instead, he reached into his tunic and pressed a blue stone pendant into her palm. The stone felt cool, pulsing with a faint, steady light. "As long as this stone stays with you, my heart will never leave your side," he promised. The desert wind picked up, but in the glow of the pendant, the world outside ceased to exist. The palace air turned brittle. Within the council hall, the Grand Vizier stood before the gathered ministers, his fingers gripping a scrap of parchment that had never reached the queen. He held it high, the ink visible under the flickering torches. The ministers leaned forward, their voices rising like dry leaves skittering across stone. They did not wait for the queen to speak. Guards moved with practiced, heavy steps, their armor clanking against the marble pillars as they turned toward the outer gates. In the courtyard, the Stargazer was pulled from his post, his arms pinned by iron grips. He did not struggle as they threw his star charts into the central fire pit. The parchment curled, blackened, and vanished into gray ash that drifted upward toward the high windows. Bilqis sat on her throne, her hands gripping the armrests until the wood bit into her skin. She heard the distant, rhythmic thud of the dungeon doors slamming shut. The council chamber fell into a suffocating, absolute silence. Every minister turned to watch her, their eyes cold and waiting. The storm arrived with a low, guttural roar that shook the palace foundations. Sand lashed against the stone walls, turning the air into a swirling, opaque veil of grit. Bilqis moved through the corridors, her hand tight around the heavy iron key. She did not look back. The wind howled through the arrow slits, masking the sound of her boots on the cold floor. She reached the lowest level, where the air tasted of damp salt and stagnant water. She shoved the key into the lock, the metal groaning as it turned. The door swung inward. She grabbed his arm, her grip firm, and pulled him into the corridor. They did not speak. They ran, their feet pounding against the stone, moving toward the stables. The horses shifted, sensing the panic. In the air, their hooves striking the wooden floor. She swung onto the saddle, pulling the reins taut. They burst out into the storm, the world reduced to a chaotic blur of sand and shadow. The palace lights behind them flickered before they were swallowed by the swirling dust. The wind died as they crested the final dune. Below, the oasis waited, a cluster of palms surrounding a pool of still, dark water. They slowed the horses to a walk, the animals breathing hard, their flanks coated in grit. Bilkis reached up. Her fingers brushed the cold metal of her crown. Then she pulled it free. It caught the first rays of the morning, a flash of light against the gray horizon. Before she let it drop, it hit the sand with a dull, final thud, half burying itself in the earth. She did not look back. She slid from the saddle, her boots sinking into the soft, cool ground. The Stargazer stepped down beside her, his hand finding hers. They walked to the edge of the water and stopped. The sun climbed over the dunes, turning the sky to a brilliant, searing gold. She squeezed his hand. The silence of the oasis was absolute, broken only by the steady rhythm of their breathing as they watched the light flood the world.